result. Here we have kings with a suited ace. Kings and big pocket pairs are overplayed by hold'em players a lot. Um, their value generally comes from flopping a set, and the only problem is when you do flop a set, you're often going to be against big straight draws and or big flush draws, which you're not going to be much of a favorite over. So just big pairs, say tens, jacks, queens, and kings without anything else going for them, generally should go in the muck without extenuating circumstances. Obviously, if a few players have limped and you're in position, you can limp them in and try and flop a set, but they're not nearly as strong by themselves as in Texas Hold'em, so it's definitely something to watch out for. The thing about Omaha and starting hands is that in Texas Hold'em, it's very easy to say, okay, aces is the best, then kings, then queens, then ace king suited, and so on and so forth. In Omaha, there's so many more hand combinations. There's a lot of hands that are close to the same strength, and a lot of medium strength hands and a lot of poor hands. So it's not like you can say, okay, this hand is the nuts, the very best starting hand, and this hand is the second and third. I mean, there is, some argument that ace, ace, king, king double suited is the best starting hand, and mathematically, that's probably correct by a percentage or two. But the truth is, what it's better to do when you're thinking about these Pot Limit Omaha hands is group them into categories of really strong, medium, weak, medium, and trash hands, and group them accordingly. And this hand is a trash hand. Uh, the ace is not suited with anything, so you're not going to be able to make any flushes. Deuce 4, 8, really raggedy, really junky, so we're just going to obviously be letting that hand go. But again, grouping hands into kind of categories of strength is a better way to think about this game than specific hand selection. Alright, here we're in the big blind, and we have a pretty strong hand. It's ace, king, jack. It's double suited. But again, because we're going to be playing here out of position, I will very rarely be raising from the blinds. Simply because it's really tough, especially at these limits, to get anyone to fold. We flopped a fairly strong hand with top pair, top kicker, and a flush draw. It's not the nut flush draw, and we also have a gut shot with a deuce. So this is an example of a hand that has many ways to win. It's possible that our top pair is good right now. It's possible that our flush could be good, and obviously if a deuce comes, we have a straight. So we just went ahead and led there. It's kind of a semi-bluff, but at the same time, it is a pretty strong flop for us. And with this hand, it's fairly weak. It does have the 5, 6, 8 working for it, and the suited king, which obviously isn't the nut flush draw, but it is a reasonable flush draw. So we will complete from the small blind. But playing from the blinds can be difficult because you're going to flop a lot of kind of marginal-ish hands. And here, obviously, flopping just bottom pair with a gut shot is not, and a backdoor flush draw, and a backdoor straight draw, but not nearly strong enough to be considered doing anything here but folding. This is a hand that has a dangler, basically one card, which is a 3 of spades here, that really isn't working at all for the hand. And when you're playing a game that you use 4 cards, anytime you have a hand where only 3 of the 4 cards are working, it's obviously going to significantly reduce its strength. So avoid hands where one of the cards just doesn't seem to work together with the other hands, with the other cards, excuse me. See, I just brought up the last hand to reiterate this point. When you're playing Omaha, you get 4 cards, true, but what you're really thinking about is each card, because it's the game where you have to use 2 cards, each card is going to work with one other card to make a hand. So in this instance, we have 9, 10, jack, 3. You can see that the 9 and the 10 could work together, the 9 and the jack could work together, the 10 and the jack could work together, the 9, 10 of hearts could work together, but this 3 really isn't going to make very many combinations of winning hands with any of the other 3 cards. So a jack 3 is weak, a 3, 9 is weak, and a 3, 10 is weak. So when you break it down in that way, where you're thinking about each of the 4 cards working with each other, obviously having that one dangling card that doesn't really do much can really negatively affect the strength of a hand. All right, here we have a um, middle-ish, straightish paired hand with one suit. I decided to raise it here in position, build the pot a little bit, and also kind of take the lead. Usually when you raise pre-flop, it's much more likely for your opponents to check to you post-flop. So we'll see what the flop brings. This is obviously a poor flop for us. We didn't really flop anything. It's a rainbow flop, ace on the board, and we're just going to have to let this hand go. But I don't mind, at these games, I don't mind limping. I don't mind raising. Um, as you get up into higher stakes, you're going to be raising much more often when you open. But I think in these micro limit games, you can definitely get away with limping in a lot more because your raises aren't going to be effective in narrowing the field as much. So you're almost better off for a lot of your speculative hands to get in cheap and see some flops. Alright, we just played an interesting hand. I just want to break it down for you real quick. We had 10 Jack King 7 with King 10 of diamonds. Late position, it was limped in by one player, so we just limped it in, tried to see a cheap flop. And then Osman min raised from the big blind. He seems to be a fairly wild and active player. So anyway, he min raised, we both called. We did flop just top pair, very dry board, and he min bet, so we did peel one. Obviously, he bet 10 cents into a 70-cent pot. And then we turned top two, and two pair is a pretty tough hand to play in that it's if it is ahead, it's not going to be very far ahead a lot of the times. So you really have to play two pair defensively. But in this case, because the board is so dry, he min bet again into us, and we raised him full pot. And he called, and you can see he turned up and down, and a flush draw, obviously a straight flush draw. And then the board came 8 on the river, and he checked to us, and we just checked behind because the 8 is a fairly scary card. It does complete a lot of wrap straight draws. So we ended up winning that pot, but it was kind of an interesting hand. Well, I think I'm going to wrap up this video now. I hope you learned something about Pot Limit Omaha High. Unfortunately, we weren't able to scoop a huge pot, and if there's interest, I'll definitely be making more videos like this. But this has been Howie for epokervideo.com. Come to the website epokervideo.com. There's tons and tons and tons of online poker strategy videos with all sorts of great information and strategy for pretty much every game you can think of. Anyway, have a great day. Peace.